Hi Ivan, you ready for episode 3?
Already, Michael. Looking forward to it.
And what's been your big news of the day?
Big news of the day, unfortunately, is the death of Percy Sledge, one of the giants of the music business, who sadly passed away. On the political front, we had more manifestos today, which have been quite interesting.
Yeah, the BBC have been spinning it as political cross-dressing, with Labour trying to appear more like the Tories with hardline cuts, and the Tories trying to be all, we are the party of the people and the working man and so on. Do you think this is all just to disguise the basic similarity of their manifestos and their ideologies?
Yeah, it's a funny thing about triangulation. Politically, they end up very, very close together, but at certain times they then need to kind of cross over because they're trying to cover off ground that the other one is being perceived as having already captured. So you look at the detail of what's happening here. You've got the Tories, who are very weak on the NHS from a perception point of view, as we can understand why that is. And what they're trying to do is to be seen as a party that's quite willing to throw money at the NHS or create that perception, although we know that's not the truth. And what that leads them to do is to throw money out there, which is unfunded commitments. So they're kind of straying into the territory which you wouldn't normally see them in, of being less prudent with the economy, shall we say. Whereas you've got Labour, on the other hand, whose perception problem down south is they spend too freely, believe it or not. So they're trying to come across as the party of even more tight running of the books and even more austerity. So as you say, there's this kind of weird thing where they've crossed into each other's space.
At the same time, the rhetoric is one thing, but the actual political reality of what they would do is another. And maybe Labour would be the slightly friendlier austerity party than the Conservatives. However, the basic fundamental question here is, does austerity work? Has it improved the lives of people? Has it improved the balance of the economy?
Yeah, I mean, two great questions, and they're both very important. The answer to the first one, obviously, is no, because everybody sees the effect of the cuts in public spending all over the place. But the answer to the second one also is no as well. From an economist point of view, it's very clear that austerity doesn't work, and it's been proved over the decades in many examples that it's a failed policy. But governments keep coming back to it for various reasons we don't have time to go into here. But that's what happens, and as I say, it's been proved over a long period of time that it's not effective.
I just wanted to know what you make of this statement, because I tend to use it quite a lot. It's important to be clear that austerity is an ideological choice, not an economic necessity.
No, that's an excellent way of putting it, because I think that's right. The people that implement austerity, if they've looked at the economics of it and the theory and the practical results of it, they would see that it doesn't work. But as I say, I think that ideological drive to reduce the size of the state and cut spending means that they focus on that policy, even when it doesn't make sense. Because the reality is, if you look back over the 5 years, if you look back at what George Osborne said he was going to do when he came into government 5 years ago, they said they were going to cut spending and that would bring the deficit down. Well, they've cut spending, but the deficit hasn't gone down anything like as much as promised. In actual fact, they've cut spending by more than they said they were going to do, slashed investment spending by almost half. But the deficit hasn't come down as much as they planned, and the reason for that is government revenue. Quite simply, when you cut government spending, people have got less money to spend. There's less people coming off benefits, there's less people paying tax, and people that are paying tax aren't earning as much as they were before and are paying less tax. So George Osborne forecast that government revenue would be going up from people's income tax and national insurance. In actual fact, it's doing nothing of the sort. And that kind of bears out the reality of the policy. The policy doesn't make sense from an economic point of view, never mind the fact that it's bad from a social point of view as well.
But they also try to mask this around a little sleight of hand by saying there's more and more people in work. But from what I believe you would like to see, it's very different, because more people in work with good, high-paid jobs that would increase the tax take and so on is one thing, but more people on zero-hours contracts and part-time work that's badly paid, it doesn't help at all, but it does allow a government to say, look at the job figures, we've got people in work.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at it, there's one interesting fact there. The average tax take, which is the average income tax plus national insurance rate, the effective rate of everybody in the country, that rate was at 34%, so that's an average of some 20%, some 40% plus your national insurance. The average was at 34% back in 2010. George Osborne forecast it would rise to 36%, because that trend is normally what happens as people get better jobs, more pay, and move up the tax brackets. But instead of the average going up to 36% by now, it's actually dropped from 34 down to 33%. So that's a very dramatic indication of the fact that in general people are earning less money in the country. And as I say, it's symptomatic of what austerity does to your economy. It really, really hammers it from a social point of view and from an economic growth point of view.
And to move on to our last little point of the day, it was interesting to watch if Murphy was going to come out swinging or if he was going to toe the line. And there was an interview on Scottish television, which, more shocking than the interview itself, was what was going on around it, which was that it seems better together have broken up. The love affair is over.
yeah. Which brings us back to Percy Sledge. Yeah, you're right. I was quite taken aback actually when I saw Ruth Davidson coming out after Nicola, and Ruth Davidson criticised Jim Murphy rather than having another pop at Nicola, and then Willie Rennie did the same. So yeah, they're all shooting for each other. Seem to be no longer all on the same side. So Jim's losing his friends rapidly.
But I think things have got to be going bad when Willie Rennie is calling you confused.
Well, yeah, say no more.
And then the last thing I noticed about that was one of those little tricks that he tried to do there was, because the focus was on around the word cuts and he couldn't say that there wouldn't be cut, he tried to change to use the word savings, which I thought was a bit of a weasel word in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they do. They look for a word that isn't as bad as the word cuts, and savings is a kind of interesting way of trying to get around that, but we all know what he means.
I believe you've got an event tonight, Ivan.
That's right, Michael. I'm still doing my End Austerity tour. Got a few more events lined up. Speaking in Edinburgh tonight. So that's at 7:30 at the SNP Hub in St John's Road, 183 St John's Road in Edinburgh. Myself, John Swinney, and Michelle Thompson, who's the local candidate, obviously.
All right, thanks, Ivan. Speak to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Michael. Bye now.